Hello, and welcome to my graduate lecture recital. During my time at Michigan State University, I've had many opportunities to reflect on my influences and the lineage of jazz guitarists that have paved the way for where we are now. One guitarist that I always think of when I reflect in this way is Kenny Burrell. I have the good fortune to be able to recall the exact moment I became interested in jazz music. I was at the home of my first guitar teacher, and he put on a record by the blues singer Jimmy Witherspoon. The record was called Blue Spoon, and the guitarist featured on it was none other than Kenny Burrell. The first song, titled I Wonder, begins with a very short guitar intro. The three chords that Kenny plays to start that song were like anything I had heard before, or anything that I could play on the guitar, and I immediately wanted to know more. So I began diving headfirst into his discography. To this day, he is one of my favorite players and greatest influences. Studying here has granted me an opportunity to go even deeper and explore the music that inspired and influenced Kenny Burrell. I had a great time learning about my hero's heroes. When asked who his influences are, Burrell has stated that he listened to Charlie Christian for his single note lines, Django Reinhardt for his personal sound, and Oscar Moore for his beautiful chords. Now, the name Oscar Moore caught my attention because I don't hear him cited that often as an influence by other players, at least not to the same extent as a Charlie Christian or a Django Reinhardt. I was aware of him as the primary guitarist for the Nat King Cole Trio, but I hadn't studied him or his playing in depth. I chose for the topic of my research this semester to be an examination of the musical relationship between Kenny Burrell and Oscar Moore, and to see what elements I could trace from one to the other. And what I found was fascinating. These two players had many musical differences. First and foremost was a great difference in technique. Oscar Moore picked with large motions that came from his wrist and his forearm. He attacked the strings quite hard and had high action and a very acoustically driven sound as a result of this technique. Kenny Burrell, on the other hand, has a more subtle and micro-scale type technique with his right hand. He anchors his fingers on the pick guard and uses the joints of his hand to move the pick. He also relies on a more amp-driven sound, which gives his playing a warmer and less acoustical type of sound. Another major difference between these two players is the harmonic language that they implemented into their improvisation. Moore played in a diatonic style that was appropriate to the music of his era, sometimes implementing approach tones and things such as that, but most often sticking within the key and just swinging as hard as he could. Kenny Burrell, on the other hand, was a master, and is still a master, of the harmonic language of bebop. Bebop is a style of playing that relies much more on chromaticism. And it's a style that didn't coalesce until Oscar Moore had already essentially retired from the world of professional music. And I think that this difference in style is largely a generational difference between the two musicians, but a noteworthy one nonetheless. Despite their many differences, the similarities were also striking, perhaps even more so. As I mentioned before, Kenny Burrell praises Oscar Moore first and foremost for his chordal playing. An examination of both of their music substantiated this claim pretty easily. The great innovation of Oscar Moore was the way that he deftly wove chords into his melodic passages. He'd often build a single note line to its climax and then begin harmonizing the top note of his melody with a few chords for added emphasis. This was something that his peers, such as Charlie Christian, who was focusing mostly on single note lines, or Freddie Green, who was focused entirely on rhythm guitar playing and playing chords, weren't really experimenting with. Oscar Moore was one of the first electric guitarists to really conceive of the instrument as being a melodic and harmonic tool at the very same moment. When I listen to Kenny Burrell's playing, I hear echoes of Oscar Moore whenever he goes to chords. Rather than implementing the block chord method favored by many of his contemporaries, Burrell more often favors an expanded version of the Moore method of chord soloing, interspersing chordal sections with single note lines in a way that is aurally striking and emotionally impactful. It seems that, true to his word, Kenny Burrell has often looked to Oscar Moore for those beautiful chords. The connections don't stop there, however. As I noted earlier, Oscar Moore is known primarily for his role in the Nat King Cole Trio, which was partially notable for its at the time somewhat unusual instrumentation of piano, bass, and guitar, a drummerless trio, if you will. When Kenny Burrell formed his first trio with Tommy Flanagan on piano and Alvin Jackson on bass, they embarked with the express purpose of emulating the King Cole Trio's group dynamic and adding to it the language of bebop that had developed in their own youth. The more I listened to and studied the music of these two legendary guitarists, the more the parallels became clear. Not only the chordal parallels and the historical parallels between their careers, but also their deep love of the blues and their penchant for innovation on the guitar. Having spoken now at length about this musical lineage, I now offer you a sort of tribute and musical summary of this musical succession. Thank you for coming, and please enjoy the performance. The solo guitar melody that you just heard was comprised of two tunes, one by Oscar Moore and one by Kenny Burrell. The first tune is titled Beautiful Moons Ago and was made famous by the Nat King Cole Trio. I discovered this recording when I was driving around doing errands here in town, and it came on while I was shuffling through the Nat King Cole discography. And the tune immediately grabbed me. I just found it to be absolutely beautiful, and that first chord that Oscar Moore plays just totally brings your attention in. As I started doing my research for this lecture recital, I actually found that Oscar Moore was one of the composers of this tune. And as far as my research has told me so far, it may be the only tune that he actually composed. And that made it an easy fit for this recital, given how beautiful I found the tune to be personally, and what a great example it was of Oscar Moore as a composer, however short-lived his time in that role may have been. The second half of this medley was comprised of the tune Listen to the Dawn by Kenny Burrell. I wanted to touch on Kenny Burrell's solo guitar style, as I find it to be very original, as he often emphasizes space and soulfulness over blazing technique. We all know Kenny Burrell to be a virtuoso, but this tune and many of his solo tunes emphasize the other side of his musical personality, and I wanted to bring that to the forefront and pair it with an offering from Oscar Moore. I hope you enjoyed it. Sweet Lorraine is a jazz standard composed by Cliff Burwell. Though it has been recorded by many great jazz artists, it is perhaps best known from the recording made by the Nat King Cole Trio, of course featuring Oscar Moore on guitar. That is the version that we will be basing our recording on here today, as we present this tune to you in the form of a drummerless trio, featuring myself on guitar, Lucas Lefebvre on bass, and Forrester Day on piano. The tune you just heard is a composition of mine titled Brick Breaker. While studying here at Michigan State University, a lot of my time and energy has been spent trying to digest the vocabulary of bebop music. Kenny Burrell, of course, is one of the masters of this playing style, and I wanted to try and capture that in a composition that tributed his style and also paid tribute to Oscar Moore as well. The title of the tune, Brick Breaker, is actually a reference to the life of Oscar Moore. There's a popular story that I have not been able to necessarily confirm is true that claims that he actually retired from music and took a job as a bricklayer. I was thinking on his career and all of the conventions that he broke in terms of guitar playing, and how in order to build a vocabulary for an instrument, sometimes those conventions need to be broken. And so I thought there was sort of an irony there in that he broke down so many barriers for us and then spent the rest of his life maybe as a bricklayer. And I wanted to kind of capture that dichotomy in a sort of punny title, and so that's why this tune is called Brick Breaker. Capital City Blues is the next tune you're going to hear. It's another composition of mine. I knew when I started writing for this recital, and with the theme I had chosen, that I would need to write a blues for the set list, because both Oscar Moore and Kenny Burrell are excellent examples of the way the blues lives through jazz. Kenny Burrell has often even shown in his album titles his personal love of the blues with albums like Bluesy Burrell or Midnight Blue. And Oscar Moore was right there on the scene when so much of the blues music that we love was happening. I think we can hear the influence of fellow Southwesterners such as T-Bone Walker in his playing, his tone, etc. Even upon leaving the Nat King Cole Trio, he actually spent time playing with the Three Blazers, which was a group that played more in the jump blues style, as opposed to the more harmonically complex jazz music that he had been playing with Nat King Cole. This tune is sort of a tribute to the blues and the way it manifests in the music of both Oscar Moore and Kenny Burrell. Perception is a tune written by Kenny Burrell. As I was doing my research for this recital and going through his discography to look for tunes to play, this one jumped out at me pretty early on. I just loved the intricate bebop melody, the way that he gives it to the baritone sax to play, and the intricate counterline that plays underneath the melody. I've tried to maintain those elements in my own arrangement. We still have Nick Holder playing the melody on baritone saxophone and myself playing that difficult counterline, as well as adding some of my own touches as well. As I prepared for this recital, I grew a much greater appreciation for Kenny Burrell as a composer. I've often loved him as a sideman, as a soloist, and as a solo guitarist, but I think I have actually overlooked his abilities as a writer. And I hope that my arrangement here of his tune Perception can really put that composition on display, as well as showing you some of my own musical identity. Thank you. Thank you for listening in to my graduate lecture recital. I would specifically like to thank all of the members of the band, Nick Chard on drum set, Lucas Lefebvre on bass, Forrester Day on piano, Nick Holder on baritone saxophone, Eli Howell on trombone, Fahim Najib on alto saxophone, and Patrick Score on trumpet. These guys did a great job helping me bring this music to life, and it was such a joy to finally be in a room playing music with people again, so I'm very thankful to them for that. I would also like to thank Professor Napoleon for his guidance over the last 2 years and all of the support he has shown me both in and outside of the classroom. I would like to thank my parents for their support and for pushing me to stick with this even in the difficult times that we've been living in. I would like to thank my fiancée Freya for putting up with me during the immense stress that comes with earning a graduate degree in music. And I would like to also thank everybody that listened in today on the stream. And before going, I would like to issue one last thank you to everyone that has taken the situation that we're living in right now seriously and put their friends, family, and community first and made sacrifices. I know this has been very difficult on us all as musicians especially, given how social of an art this is. And I just want to thank you all for what you've done and let you know that I'm proud to know so many people who were willing to do what it takes to keep this alive under difficult circumstances. Thank you.